Jimmy Moore is one of the most powerful ambassadors for the low carbohydrate revolution. He personally lost a substantial amount of weight, which he'd never been able to do on the traditional advice. And in this lecture, he talks about his personal experiences in losing so much weight and keeping it off.
I am not going to use slides for this presentation. If you stay through Sunday, I have a whole slideshow about cholesterol and Keto Clarity, and you'll hear that one. But because this is my story, I thought it would be fun just to share and share from my heart. I didn't really prepare a lot of notes because if at this point in my life, I don't know this story and I can't articulate it well, I have no business being on this stage, right? So I got to tell you, when I was coming in last night after midnight, not quite as bad as Gary, but after midnight, the driver, we were having a discussion and everything. And, what brings you to South Africa? I said, I'm going to this conference this weekend and speaking. And he said, what's this conference? I said, have you heard of Professor Tim Noakes? And that's like asking a church if they've heard of Jesus Christ. He was like, yeah. He said, everybody in Cape Town knows Professor Noakes. He's got all the athletic people going on his diet. It's just amazing. So kudos to you guys, because if you ask people in Spartanburg, South Carolina, who is Jimmy Moore, they'd be Jimmy who? So good job on that one. So I like to tell people I don't have an MD, a PhD, an RD, or any D after my name. I'm just a guy who changed his life forever. And it was through the power of nutrition and doing things radically different. You've already heard some incredible presentations already from several people who've explained to you the mechanism behind why this works, how we got into this mess, why people believe low fat, yada, 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 on and on. I want to stand here as a real person. I'm that patient 10 years ago that was in trouble and didn't know it. I was one of those people that was like cognitively dissonant from the reality, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So I grew up in a typical American household. My mom was a single mom. Grew up, I'm 43, so I grew up in the 80s, right when all this low-fat stuff was hitting really hard. And my mom, interestingly, bought into it hook, line, and sinker, right? And so she had rice cakes, and she had fat-free ice cream, just on and on and on. I could talk about all the nasty foods that she was eating, and a lot of rabbit food in the house with fat-free dressing, of course. So juxtaposed to that was me and my older brother Kevin and my younger sister Beverly. That's the sleep deprivation coming in. Younger sister Beverly, we all ate kind of crappy garbage, as I like to call it now. So we had all the breakfast cereals. We had Blueberry Crunch and Count Chocula. And did you guys ever have any of that kind of? Be thankful, because it's crap. But we would have like pizza, and I would like to surprise my mom with cooking, which my wife now appreciates that I love cooking. But I don't make this. We used to make hamburger helper and a can of green beans, a can of corn, and some biscuits that we cooked in the oven. Yeehaw. That was life. That was what it looked like growing up. Now, I remember one day Mom was out of some food, and I thought, there's this rice cakes. Let me try one. I went, who would eat this? It's styrofoam. What are we doing, people? So that kind of gives you the context of what I grew up with. And I literally grew up in that kind of food environment. So from a very early age, I was eating the crappy garbage. And it's funny because people think you become an adult, you suddenly know how to eat, right? We just expect, you're an adult. You have to be responsible now, so you know what to do. Well, no, you know what you know. You know what you were taught. You know what you saw growing up. And for me, Blueberry Crunch, Doritos, Coca-Cola, all of that was a normal part of my life from a feeding standpoint. So why would I change? Why would anybody expect anybody to change under those auspices? So In my early 20s, I started gaining weight. Now, I'll back up just a little bit. I did struggle with weight growing up. Obviously, eating all those processed carbohydrates don't come without a consequence. And of course, I would even eventually, go on some diets, and the default was always cutting the fat, cutting the calories, and exercising more. That was kind of the three things that were the magic. Everybody knows. How many people in here believe that those are the three elements that it takes to lose weight and be healthy? Yeah. So that's what people believe, and so they do it obediently. And so whenever I needed to lose weight and get healthy, I would go on a starvation diet, basically, because that's what a low-fat diet is. It starves you. It starves your brain of the very essential elements that it needs more than ever. And as you heard from Christine, that's fat. And so we cut our fat. And boy, oh boy, my mom, not eating fat. I love you, Mom, but she was, wasn't fun to be around. And I inherited that from her. Every time I would go on low-fat diets, I would be, and I'm a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but I would become like this really angry monster. And I'm going, what in the world is wrong with me? I'm going out of my mind. I was literally going out of my mind, not having the fat. And so I would do these diets off and on. I remember doing one in my 11th grade year, but before my senior year, I wanted to lose weight and everything. I did the Slim Fast diet. Anybody ever done Slim Fast? Do y'all have Slim Fast in South Africa? I'm hearing yes, no, yes, no. No. Be thankful, because that stuff's crap. Or it'll make you crap, or one of those things. So it's not good, let's put it that way. So I did that, and I've always actually been very successful at losing weight. For me, it's never been about weight control, and I still struggle with that even today. I think from all those years of eating poorly, it makes it where I have to be, like Christine's grandmother, I have to be that much more vigilant about it than probably most people. I joke people that I ate all the carbs I was allowed to have in the first 32 years of my life, so now okay, that's probably not true, but there might be some element of truth to that. So back to the story. So I would lose weight and obviously get hungry and then gain it all back. And very famously, it hit a tipping point in 1999 when my brother Kevin, who is now deceased, he actually had a series of heart attacks in 1 week. He had 3 straight heart attacks. He was 32 years old, and it just about killed him. Yeah, I heard the gasp when I said 32, because that's too young to have heart attacks, isn't it? So that woke me up, and I said, I need to do something. Something is very wrong if my brother, who was only 4 years older than me, is having a heart attack at the age of 32. So there I am at 28 saying, hey, I got to do something. So I go on this ultra low-fat diet, and I was adding things to my diet. You might recognize some of these, and maybe you guys have the marketing claims on the front packaging like we have in America. It's really ubiquitous in America, but on the front packaging of marshmallows, did you know they were naturally fat-free? It says it right there on the package. It's got to be true. And then we have these things called Twizzlers, little red vine type things, and a naturally fat-free food. And you're going, okay, well, if it's fat-free, well, Coca-Cola is fat-free. There's no fat in Coca-Cola at all. And so I actually lost weight eating that way. I was not a very nice man. If you ask my wife, Christine, she'll tell you I was a monster that year. But I did lose a significant amount of weight. But again, it wasn't about the weight. It was about how was that food impacting my body. And it was impacting it, although bringing down weight, it was impacting it in a negative way in mood, in hunger control, which is so important, on and on and on. I mean, all these little quality of life issues. So, needless to say, one day my wife says, do you guys have McDonald's here? Everybody has McDonald's, of course you do. In Australia, they call it macas. She said, can I get a meal from McDonald's? And I said, well, sure, you can have a meal at McDonald's. McDonald's if I can have just this one time, whatever it was. And she said, okay, just this one time. So you know what happened next. How many patients have you had that say, oh, I just was going to eat it one time and then I couldn't stop? Well, that was me. And I binged like crazy for 4 months, and I gained all the weight back. And I lost a significant amount of weight on that. I think it was something like 160 pounds doing that. And I gained it all back in 4 months because here's where it became real for me. If that was the way I had to eat to be healthy, then I would rather be fat and eat what I want than to feel like that and be healthy. That was a horrible place to be in. And I wonder how many of your patients think that way now. If the only alternative is a low-fat diet and deprivation and hunger and all of the other things just for this magical aesthetically pleasing body that looks good on the outside and people don't, run in horror that you're fat, that's a hard one. Which is why this LCHF message is so powerful, because it solves all those problems that I just talked about. So flash forward a few years later, after 1999, losing all the weight, gaining it all back, and I eventually got up to 410 pounds. Yeah. I was going to put a picture on the screen, but I thought, you know what? I don't think it's so much about the weight as it is about the health change that happens when you shift. And so I thought at the time, though, that I weighed 330 pounds. 410, 330. This is where I was. This was the reality. This is where I thought I was. Huge, huge gap. Now, of course, I had no scale that would weigh me. That should have been clue number one, Jimmy. And I had tried, as you've heard, and failed to keep weight off and to get healthy and to solve all those issues that I've dealt with for many years, doing it the conventional way. And I was following to a T all of those guidelines. Cut your fat, exercise an hour a day. I was doing all of that and was not seeing the results. So along comes the fall of 2003, and I was substitute teaching in a class at the time, and I was writing the lesson up on the board, and from the back of the room, I heard this little boy. It's still right there. I can hear his voice right there. He said, "Man, Mr. Moore's really fat." Ouch. Of course, the whole room started laughing. And I turned around and started laughing to keep from crying. And that was strong. I was like, yeah, you're right. And he was speaking to a deeper issue. It wasn't so much the weight. It was just I was not well. I was taking 3 prescription medications at the time for high cholesterol, a statin drug. I was taking high blood pressure medication. I was on breathing medication. What is it? Advair, the little stuff you suck into your lungs, because I was wheezing. I was a mess, and again, thought I had a okay problem, but didn't realize how bad it was. We'll get to that in a second. So then I also had this other experience that kind of, people are like, what's the epiphany moment that made all this happen? So I had another experience where I went, my church had like this fair, and they had this big rock climbing wall. And so anybody ever climbed a rock wall? Yeah, they're kind of cool. So I was watching these kids and these adults go up and down this rock wall like Spider-Man, and I'm going, okay, that looks kind of cool. Again, 330, I can handle this. This is not a big deal. So I go to do it, and they put the gurney and everything on me, and I go to do it, and I lift one leg, and it slips off. And I'm going, okay. And now I lift one leg and try to lift, and it just slips off. And so I'm looking around and going, I'm embarrassed because I should be able to do that. I just watched kids and adults alike do that, and I can't do that. What's wrong? Something is bad wrong. So that woke me up. Then I'd get in and out of my little Ford Festiva I had at the time. It's just a little lunchbox is all it is of a car. And I would get in and out and I would rip pants. And that's horrible, especially with the shysters that work at big and tall stores. Yeah, they charge twice as much for those clothes. And yeah. Anyway, so you keep ripping all those, and it gets very expensive. So I had all these moments that kind of added up. But then the coup d'etat of it all was at Christmas time, 2003. I get a diet book for Christmas from my mother-in-law. Thanks, Mom. Just what I wanted. So she'd given me diet books every year for Christmas, not so subtle hint that her wife's husband needs to lose weight. So she gave me Dr. Phil's book, Today Can Be a Changing Day in Your Life. Just on and on. Weight Watchers, I've done all of them. And they were all predicated before this one that I got this time. They were all predicated on low fat, low calorie, blah, blah, blah. So I read this one, I look at this one, and she gave me Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution. I had heard of the Atkins diet, and this is a funny story because in 1999 when I lost that significant amount of weight, people at the time, you must have done that on that new Atkins diet. And this was my exact words. I would never do that diet because it's so unhealthy. Never say never, I guess, because January 1st, 2004, I started on the Atkins diet. So I'm reading this book between Christmas and New Year's, and I'm going, this guy is whacked out of his mind. What do you mean, eat less carbohydrate? Don't you know that's where you get your energy from? How are you supposed to energize your body if you're not feeding it what it wants to fuel the body? Eat more fat? This guy's a cardiologist? What is he doing telling people to eat more fat? Doesn't he know that's going to raise your cholesterol, clog your arteries, and give you heart disease? We all believe that's true, and there's a few in the room that still believe that's true. But I said, what the heck? I have tried all the low fat. I tried all the conventional wisdom. In fact, I went and testified in 2010 before the USDA Dietary Guidelines Committee. I was one of 50 people in the whole United States of America. There's 300 million people. 50 people gave oral testimony. That's it. And I was one of only 2 real people there because the rest of them were like, hi, I'm from the soy lobby and I want you to get more soy in the dietary guideline. Hi, I'm in the sugar industry and I want you to feed more sugar. And that's what they were doing. I get up there and I'm doing what I'm doing with you guys now. I'm just talking. And I said, you know what? I did all the opposite things that you said to do and I saw pretty good results. Maybe you should think about that. A lot longer words, but that was kind of the basic gist. So I start on this crazy diet that people think is so dangerous. Low carb, high fat. January 1st, 2004, the first month, I lose 30 pounds. What's that, 13 kilo? So pretty significant. So now I was a robust 380 pounds. And I was so energetic. That was the cool thing. I had such a quick transformation. Now, I'm not going to lie. First few days were hell. And if I'd known Eric Westman and Steve Finney and some of these guys here that could tell you how to ward off some of those side effects early on, mainly it's electrolyte loss and salt loss and water loss. You have to kind of replenish all those things. Had I known about that, I wouldn't have suffered so bad in those first few days. But once I got beyond those 3 or 4 days of really kind of horrific side effects, out the other side, it was like, the skies opened up. Everything was just awesome. And I felt so energetic. And it happened quick. It so surprised me because I'd never been on a diet before where I was feeling that good that quickly. Now, sometimes we fooled ourselves into thinking in the past that when I went on a low-fat diet, I felt better because I, quote, looked better, having lost the weight. But this was different. I hadn't lost all the weight yet, and yet I already had that kind of nirvana feeling early on. So that was kind of a good little motivational factor. So then I get so energetic, I go to the gym and want to work out. I've never wanted to work out in my life. And yet here I was at the YMCA on my lunch break, walking on the treadmill 3 miles an hour for 10 minutes. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot because it's not a whole lot now. But back then, 380 pounds, that was a lot. I tell people I was weightlifting because I had a lot of weight that I was lifting. And so at the end of the second month, I lost another 40 pounds. So there it is, 70 pounds in 2 months. I lost 100 pounds in 100 days. And it was at that point that I realized, there's something to this Atkins diet. And it really wasn't so much the weight loss, which was cool, that got my attention. It was the way I felt. The hunger was gone. I had no cravings after, I think it was about a month. The cravings totally went away. And the key was adding in, as you've heard from Zoe and different other ones, adding in that extra fat. You've got to have the more fat. I argue we're a fat-deprived society these days, not a fat-deficient one. Or fat overload one, sorry. So there I was, and I was losing weight, and I came into some roadblocks along the way. So in the summer that year, after I'd lost 100 pounds, the weight loss just stopped. 1 week, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 8 weeks. I had not lost a single pound after losing 100. Finally, 10 weeks later, I start losing again. But I did something along the way. I measured. I wanted to see, was anything happening at all? I lost 6 inches off my waist when I lost no weight. So I think the scale is the single most evil invention of all time because I think it puts the focus on the wrong thing. Yeah, you can clap that if you want to. And I get hundreds of emails a day with what I do, and I'll tell you about that here in a second. But from people, and their number one gripe is, I'm feeling great. My HDL cholesterol's gone up. My triglycerides have gone down. My blood sugar's normalized. I'm not hungry. I have no cravings. I get to eat steak and butter and cheese and cream and all these wonderful, luxurious foods. But I've only lost 5 pounds in the last 2 weeks. What? What are you talking about? Look at all the good things. We put the focus off of weight and more onto health. Guess what happens as a side effect of being healthy? You tend to lose weight. So I think if nothing else, maybe this is a take-home message for you. Get your patients to focus on doing healthy habits that will make their blood chemistry come out beautifully. And the side effect of making them healthy doing that, hopefully through the right nutrition, is weight loss. So there I was after the 10 weeks that it stalled, and it kicks back up. And by the end of that year, I had lost 180 pounds. So I go from 410 to 230, and it totally changed my life, obviously. I remember at the time I was writing for this website. It was a non-diet website, just totally off topic. But I was sitting there writing about this whole experience. Oh my God, you guys, you got to check out this diet. And it was pretty awesome. And the Atkins people actually found that, found the different columns that I was writing. And so they're like, can we feature your story on the front of our website? I'm like, okay, sure. And I didn't even know there was an Atkins company. I just did the diet after reading the book. So they put it on there, and I start getting emails from around the world. All these people, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? How'd you do it? Tell me more. Tell more of your story. I'm like, will you people leave me alone? And so a buddy of mine at the time said, hey, he had a political blog, and he said, hey, you should start blogging. I said, what the heck is a blog? He said, you just write your thoughts and, just write and journal. And I was like, okay, well, I'm an English guy. I love to write. Sure, I can do that. So I start in April of 2005, the Livin, Vida, low carb blog. Any Ricky Martin fans in the, yeah. Livin, La Vida. So So yeah, I started that blog, and very quickly it started growing in popularity because there weren't a lot of really health blogs per se at the time. Mark Sisson's blog was not out. Rob Wolf wasn't around. None of the guys that are like really prominent today were out at the time. And so I kind of forged this new way, kind of just talking very openly. And that's one thing that I've always committed to with my blog writing, is to be honest, because I want to help your patients know the reality. And I want to empower them. I want them to know they can come to you confident that they have information that's going to help them. I've talked to a lot of doctors, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but a lot of them want that. And how many doctors in here would you love to have your patients come and totally understanding a lot of the things about their condition? Raise your hand. Absolutely. I mean, why would you not? Now, there is a flip side to that. I understand that there's people they think they're know-it-alls because Dr. Google told them they had XYZ. So I'm not talking about those people, but just informed patients, empowered patients, patients that take back control of their health. That's what I had to do, because I had doctors, and in fact, before I started my blog, I went and saw my doctor after losing the weight and everything. And he's like, wow, you really lost weight. And how'd you do it? And I said, Atkins diet. He's like, oh, we need to check your cholesterol. And I'll tell the rest of this story on Sunday so you can hear it. But we'll talk about the cholesterol thing. But so I try to empower people through the blog. And so it quickly grew 5,000 the first month readers, 10,000 the next month. And it's just grown and grown. Today, it's about 250,000 people read it a month. And so I'm very privileged to do that. But a year after that, this guy comes to me and he says, hey, I love your blog, and if you talk half as good as you write, you should be a podcaster. So what was my question to him? What the heck's a podcast? This was 2006. They weren't nearly as big then as they are now. In fact, in the real food, low carb, paleo, primal, whatever you want to call it, movement, there was none. I mean, hardly anybody was out there. And so this guy says, well, I'm doing this compilation show called the Health Hacks Podcast, and I want you to do like a little 5-minute rant. I said, well, I can rant. So I think the very first thing I ever did was on high fructose corn syrup, why it's the devil. And it is, by the way. So I do that, and about a month later, the guy comes back and he says, dude, you need your own show. Nobody's listening to any other part of the show but what you're talking about. I was like, but I don't know how to do this. I had a little bit of radio background in the 90s. I did Christian radio in Virginia while I was in college. But that was Michael W. Smith. Now here's Amy Grant. That was the extent of what I did. So it wasn't like what I do now, professionally interviewing people. So I started in October of 2006, the Livin, Vida low carb show. The guy was like, what do you want to call it? I'm like, well, Livin, Vida low carb blog, so why don't we call this the Livin, Vida low carb show? Okay, that works for him. So the guy that actually found me, he's still my producer today. He produces all my podcasts. I do a couple of other ones as well. But as Professor Noakes said, over 900 episodes. I'm coming up on 1,000. I tell people I'm going to hit 999 and just stop. No, I wouldn't do that. I'm having too much fun. But I've had the opportunity and the real privilege to be able to talk to so many medical doctors, researchers, fitness people. Really, if you're in this space, I've talked to you, or you're on my list to be talked to. And the exciting thing is how it's grown. And I feel like, all the people in this room that will be speaking to you this weekend, they are really heroes. And I love that they have given of themselves. I'm just a patient. I'm an empowered patient. I'm one that's trying to take this message to the masses in a big way and doing my part. And I often tell other patients, don't get caught in white coat syndrome. Because I think even you would admit you don't have all the answers. You don't know all the answers. But you are a great patient advocate. You are there for your patients. You all love your patients. I totally believe that, without a doubt. I think medical doctors, you are some of the biggest heroes in the whole world because you do things, yeah, go ahead, clap that. Because you do things that are miraculous. But what you don't know is nutrition. And I'm going to test that right now. How many of you in your medical training had 1 year or more of nutrition, and naturopaths do not count? Raise your hand. Oh yeah? Cool. One person. How many had 6 months or more? 3 months? 1 month? 3 weeks? 2 weeks? 1 week? Less than 1 week? Thank you. I just talked to a Duke Medical School student. He just graduated. I asked him the same question in North Carolina. That's where Dr. Westman's from. And I said, how much nutrition education did you get? 1 3-hour seminar. Didn't mention carbohydrates. Didn't mention insulin. I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it. Medical professionals are giving out dietary advice every single day. And what are they doing? They're defaulting to what the government authorities are saying is the truth. Low fat, low calorie, eat more healthy whole grains, and exercise. That's kind of the little template. And doctors, that would be like calling your plumber to come fix your lawnmower. Could he do it? Maybe, but he's not trained to do it. And what I'm trying to do for patients is to educate them in an easy way. Because quite frankly, it's kind of crazy out there in the nutritional health world. Have you noticed lately? Especially online. There's so many mixed messages. There's so many confusing things for patients. They don't know what to believe. So what I try to do, and I know several others are doing this as well, is try to put it in palatable information so it's easy to understand and they can understand it very clearly. That's why I'm writing my books. It's why, we're doing the podcast. It's why I try to do and be that patient advocate example. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm saying that people can follow a template that can get them on the pathway to health. And that's what it's really all about, right? You want your patients to be healthy. And if they're healthy, you're happy, they're happy, and we're all happy. And so LCHF did that for me. I'm very honored to have been able to speak to you here today. Thank you very much.